more than 4 hours a day, or you're involved in repetitive bending, lifting, twisting type activities? Quick hands up. Yeah, how many of you think that's good for you? How many of you sit at a desk more than 4 hours a day, or are involved in repetitive bending or lifting or twisting activities on an ongoing basis? How many of you think that is healthy? Great, I'm glad we're all in agreement. Okay, I want you to imagine living 70, 80, or 90 years of quality health. What's the key word there? Quality, thank you. Imagine that type of life where you're not dependent upon any medication or surgery just to be able to get up and function every day. Who wants that? Yes! Okay. Imagine having a predictable level of health in the next 10, 20, or 30 years where you'll know exactly what you're going to be doing, loaded with energy and vitality, basically doing whatever you want, whenever you want, whether that be being an active mum or dad, still being able to play your favorite sports or hobbies or outdoor pursuits or pastimes or craft, or maybe it's just being able to pick up your grandkids or be able to walk to the spa without pain. Who wants that? Yes, okay. It's basically quality of life. We want to be able to do the things that we love doing. And how many of you think that pain often ends up being a barrier for you being able to do that? Absolutely, okay. And in particular, low back pain, because guess what? 80% of the population at some point suffer significant low back pain in the Western world. It's the number one leading cause of work absenteeism. All right, so it's a massive epidemic we have in the world today. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Neil Thompson, and firstly, I just want to congratulate you for being here tonight, because technically you being here tonight means you're an action taker, and success is always reserved for action takers. So let's imagine you've got two people. Okay, the one person knows everything about gym. The other person actually goes to the gym. Which person actually gets better and loses weight and healthier and stronger? Obviously, the person who goes to the gym, right? So people who take action, so well done. Give yourself a pat in the back. Give yourself a pat in the back. Wow, you guys are like half asleep. We've got to like drop kick you guys out of action here. Okay, so I know it's the end of a long day, but hopefully tonight you're going to really be inspired by the fact that you can actually start to do something to address your chronic low back problems or back issues, if it's just back issues that you're coming through for. So really, there's three main things that we're going to be covering today. Firstly, you're going to learn the difference between symptomatic treatment of low back pain versus addressing the root cause of your low back pain. You're also going to learn about the most important system in your body that is responsible for keeping you healthy, and how the state of your spine and posture is critical to the function of that system. And then number three, you're going to learn how to look after that system so that you can get healthy and stay healthy for life. Who wants to be healthy for life? Yes, I'm glad we all want to be healthy for life, all right? Okay. I've probably attended, I've been counting closely recently, but over 100 different conferences and seminars now over the last 20 years, studying the lifestyle strategies of some of the healthiest people on the planet. And I find I always get so much more out of the message when I understand a little bit more about the messenger. So is it all right if I just give you just a quick sort of background as to where I came from and how I've ended up coming to talk to you guys tonight? Is that all right? Because you're probably wondering, what is this funny Southern African person actually doing, speaking to us about back pain? Okay, so yes, I grew up in Southern Africa. I went and did my master's degree in chiropractic in Durban. For those of you wondering why we get the title doctor, it's because it's a 6-year master's degree. And at the end of completing that, I was very privileged to be able to go to Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and run a very busy practice there. Spinal clinic there on the west coast of Ireland. And it was basically because I had an Irish passport, and I was very grateful for my grandfather being born there, and yes, that's why I've got the red hair. And So I had this great opportunity. I literally landed my bum in the butter. I signed up, got to this place. I had to run the clinic, and I was a new graduate. So, suddenly seeing, over 100 people a week, I really got immersed into clinical experience very fast. And after 2 years, it had become the fastest growing clinic in Ireland. But I was growing frustrated because, yes, we were getting great results. And the owner of the practice thought it was great. I was doing a wonderful job. I was making lots of money. But at the end of the day, I was growing frustrated because I wasn't seeing long-term changes for people. People kept coming back in with the same thing. So I'd get them better, and they'd be functioning for a while, but then they kept coming back in with exactly the same thing. And I was thinking, well, I'm not really any different to a pain pill then, really, because I'm not giving people long-term relief and long-term correction or long-term benefit. So I wanted to take the practice on a totally different course. The owner of the practice wasn't so keen. Things were going quite well for him financially. So we decided to part ways, and I then set up my own practice. At about that time, I then went and did a postgrad course in the States over the next 3 years, studying chiropractic biophysics. Now, for those of you who are wondering what on earth that is, it's the most researched form of chiropractic there is in the world. In fact, there's more published peer-reviewed journal articles supporting chiropractic biophysics than all other chiropractic and spinal corrective techniques put together. So we're very much based on evidence. We have a saying here in the clinic, in God we trust, all others bring data. So unless it's backed up with really good quality research and science, we don't talk about it here. So I just want to assure some of you who might be thinking, how credible is all this stuff? It's solid, okay? And I can even give you a lot of references afterwards if you want. Basically, the techniques we use here, over 180 different peer-reviewed journal articles have been produced to support them. So hopefully that will give you some form of assurance. I also then did a postgrad course in wellness, Eat Well, Move Well, Think Well principles with one of the world's leading wellness experts, Dr. James Chestnut, who actually now lectures most of the medical professors in North America. And it was when I started to combine the holistic approaches together with the chiropractic biophysics that we really started to see long-term breakthroughs for people. This clinic now is one of only 5 clinics, or less than 5 clinics in the whole of Europe that practices chiropractic biophysics. And I'm one of only 2 advanced chiropractic biophysics practitioners. At about that time, I fell in love with my now wife, who is the sister of my best friend, and yes, I've heard all the jokes. I've actually known her since I was literally 6 years old, because I used to go to his house, on the weekends, and she happened to be there. She only became interesting though when I was about 13. But anyway, we got married, and we were living obviously in Ireland at the time, and she obviously grew up from where I did, and she had no family in Ireland, so she wasn't so keen to start a family in Ireland when we had no actual family to support her. Understandably, I think you ladies could probably relate to that. And at about that time, her brother, my best mate, just moved to the Isle of Man. So yes, we are eventually getting to the reason why I'm now here in the Isle of Man. So he persuaded us, why don't you come to the Isle of Man? And my initial response was, well, why do I want to go from one muddy, wet island to another muddy, wet island? But he said, no, it's great, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's a great place to raise a family. So I said, well, we'll come and have a holiday here and we'll see. And we actually loved it. When we got here, we thought, what an incredible, beautiful place this is. And it's a perfect place to raise a family. And there's no kind of clinic like we had here. So we set up shop here in 2009. So Align for Life was born in 2009. And since then, we've seen over 5,000 patients, and we've changed the lives of hundreds and hundreds of families because of the principles that you're going to be learning tonight. Because we're getting to the root cause of people's problems and also approaching their problem from very much a holistic perspective. All right, so that's kind of a little bit about my background. But I think enough about me. I want to get into really the nitty-gritty of what we've all come tonight, because I know you've come here to learn about how you can actually address this back problem of yours. So some of you are probably thinking, back pain, maybe it's tight muscles that you're struggling with, lost range of motion, so you're so stiff and you just can't turn anymore, bend. leg pain, swelling, burning, numbness, and many others. Now, just to give you an idea of how I even became a chiropractor in the first place, was at the age of 12 years old, I suffered a debilitating low back problem. So I can particularly relate to this tonight's topic. I was 12 and I could barely do up my shoelaces or go for a run. So prognosis for me wasn't so good. Would you agree? I was 12. You know, you'd think I was like 62. Apologies for any 62-year-olds here or anyone who's older. So I went through the usual channels. I went to the physiotherapist. They couldn't help. I went through to my GP. They couldn't help. I went even and saw one of the leading spine surgeons at the time, and they couldn't help either. And eventually, out of desperation, my mum took me to a chiropractor. Now, at that time, they weren't sort of well known or that well recognized. So some people thought, you know, some of her friends thought she was a little bit irresponsible. But from that day, when I first got my first adjustment, I noticed something was different. And my life radically changed after that. Within 2 months, I was back on the sports field, playing the sports I love. Rugby and hockey was my passion. And I was able to get back onto the sports field at a point when I was now so disillusioned and so concerned and worried that is this going to be my lot in life? So you can imagine the relief I experienced when actually I was back on the field running like I normally did. And it wasn't just back pain then that also suddenly started to improve. A whole bunch of other things in my health started to improve as well when I started getting adjusted by the chiropractor. Now some of you are thinking, well, I wonder why. Well, you're going to hopefully learn tonight why. Okay, so it's not just about reducing pain. So I personally can vouch for the fact that it changed my life, and it obviously so changed my life that I thought, you know what, when I grow up, I want to actually do what those guys do. So by the time I was 16, I knew exactly what I was going to be doing, and the rest really, as you say, is history. These are pretty much the classic things that people are struggling with. And what I want to try and do is just maybe share some information about what the spine makeup is, so that you can understand really why the spine does what it does and why you can end up developing problems very easily. So when you look at the vertebra, okay, you've got a shock absorber between the two bones. Okay, so you've got 5 lumbar vertebrae, okay, in the lumbar spine here. And you've got to remember your spine has got to be both very strong but also very flexible. So the design of it is very, very important. So the shock absorber enables it to be flexible and move well. And obviously the bones here now protect the spinal cord inside and the spinal nerves that exit at each of these levels where the holes are. All right? And I think you can imagine if these holes suddenly start to get smaller, what do you think that's going to cause? Pressure on the nerve, right? What do you think pressure on the nerve could end up causing? Pain could be one of them, but guess what? You might have no pain at all. 0 pain. But you're wondering why your bowel's not functioning so well. Okay? Or why you're going to the toilet regularly at night. You keep on having to go to the loo. Or why you're having problems falling pregnant, or you're getting recurrent miscarriages. Okay? Or it might be something just as simple as sciatica. You know, pain, numbness, tingling, pins and needles down the leg. Now the disc, which is that shock absorber, the outer part of it is like a fibrous material. And the inner part of it is like a jelly-like substance. And this jelly-like substance is never supposed to be outside the disc. But unfortunately, with repetitive bending and lifting and twisting, as well as prolonged sitting, because when you sit, most of your weight actually gets transmitted through these discs. Whereas when you're standing, most of the weight is transmitted through the joints. So if you're sitting a lot at a desk, guess what happens to the disc? It starts to degenerate. Okay, and eventually over time, it can form enough of a radial tear, because you start to develop circumferential tears, and those eventually coalesce to form a radial tear, and then this gel-like substance in the middle can start to protrude out. like this, and they can start to now put pressure on the nerve. It's what we call a disc bulge or disc herniation, okay, or aka slipped disc, some people will think of it as. The disc doesn't actually slip out, it bulges out, it herniates out, okay? And obviously that nerve is going down to supply the leg, and this is why you can end up getting sciatica, numbness, tingling, pins and needles, all right? It could even be things like restless leg syndrome. How many people have heard of restless leg syndrome? Yes! Okay, common as well, all right? Now when you look at an x-ray from the side, okay, so this is, imagine the person is facing that way, all right? So this is just the lower back, so it's just this part here. You'll notice the curve should form part of an ellipse, part of the shape of a rugby ball, okay? And when it's in that specific ellipse shape, the lumbar spine is very strong, okay? There's virtually no pressure on the discs here, all right? And it's going to move well. Unfortunately, with this person here, can you see how the red dotted line indicates the back of the vertebral bodies? Can you see how it's all jagged? And the black arc is actually telling us where the lumbar spine should be aligned. So you can see how the vertebrae have all shifted back like this, and they're all now staggered like a staircase. Not moving well. The discs now are being put under a lot of abnormal loading and pressure, and so you're going to start to get bulging of the disc as seen by the MRI here. Does that make sense? Okay, so your alignment of your spine is hugely influential to how well your spine can move and how well it can transmit loads. Now, would you agree that this part of your back here is probably carrying quite a lot of weight? Everything from here up, right? Okay, so would you agree you want this to be a really strong load-bearing area? It needs to be well aligned and moving well. Okay. As soon as the spine moves away from this typical ellipse shape, as indicated by the black curve here, we know there's going to be weaknesses and abnormal loads on the discs and on the joints and pressure on the nerves as well. And this is when problems can begin, whether it be numbness, tingling, pins and needles, pain, or even things like, remember all these nerves that come out of here, guess what they're also supplying? Okay? Bowel. Okay? Reproductive area as well. So this is why these areas can be affected too. You've all heard of IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome. Okay? All right? Very, very commonly associated with misalignment problems in that area. So, yes, all of these obviously can develop. How are they typically treated in conventional circles? Heat and bed rest is very common. Problem is when you've got inflammation, if you've just injured your back, the worst thing you can do is put heat on it if you've just injured it, because heat will increase inflammation. And a lot of the pain you're experiencing is inflammation. So if it's something if you've only just injured your back, you should always use ice, okay, to reduce the inflammation. Heat is only good if the problem's been there a long, long time and you're now just so stiff and rigid. Now you want to bring heat into the area to try and help move things a bit, okay? But generally speaking, most people resort to medication, painkillers, right? And there's a huge range of painkillers, all right, which we're going to cover here. And you're going to see the problem with that, because if you take a painkiller, are you getting a low back problem because of a lack of paracetamol or a lack of, some sort of anti-inflammatory? No. So why is your answer to your low back problem is take some paracetamol or an anti-inflammatory? Because it gets rid of the symptom, right? But what do you think that's teaching us at a subconscious level? If we get rid of the symptom, we've dealt with the problem, but have we really dealt with the problem? Yes or no? No, okay? All we've done is we've just masked the symptom. So I want you to think of symptoms a bit like this. When your body gives you pain, it's trying to tell you, stop, something's wrong. Get this addressed. Don't just cover me up. So imagine a fire started in the back room there in the kitchen, and all these fire alarms started going off. And you've heard these fire alarms go off before, right? They make a hell of a racket. And the temptation is just to disconnect the fire alarm, isn't it? Well, taking the pill is exactly the same as disconnecting your fire alarm. Because if you disconnect the fire alarm, what's going to happen to the fire in the back?
Carries on.
Carries on, right? And what it doesn't just carry on, it gets bigger and worse, all right? Until eventually the whole house burns down. Okay, in this analogy, your body, all right? So when we get pain, we shouldn't ignore it. We shouldn't just take a pill to suppress it, okay? Because it's actually only going to come back to bite us with interest. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, but I understand when you're in pain, you just want to do anything to get out of pain. I get that. But it's important we understand the difference between treating symptoms, disconnecting fire alarms, versus actually addressing the root cause of the problem. Let's go extinguish the fire. Who wants to extinguish the fire on their low back? Yes. Okay. All right, good. So there's also other options like physical therapy, steroid injections. I'm sure all of you are probably familiar with some of these. Some of you may have tried almost all of these. And you're literally sitting here, this is your last hope. And you think, what is this guy going to do to actually help me out? And hopefully, we're going to give you that breakthrough. Because I was there, I remember what it's like. I know what it's like to get up in the morning and you feel like you're 60 and I was 12. I know what it's like not to be able to do the things you love doing, whether it be gardening, DIY, where you can't even pick up your kids. You can't play football with them anymore. Or you can't even go do the shopping without having to have someone to help you carry the shopping bags. I get it. I know what it's like. Or some of you just can't even get a decent night's sleep because you're in pain. And I know. I've been there. I know what it's like. So let's just talk about drugs first. How bad is it? Okay, these are, once you get beyond anti-inflammatories, you know, Panadol, paracetamol, and your sort of typical anti-inflammatories, these are the kind of pain medications that a lot of people are now on, especially if they're people who've had pain for many, many years, i.e. chronic pain. Look at, as the timeline here, between 1993 and 2016, how much increase there is in pain medication, in particular opiates. What are opiates? Opioid analgesics. Does anyone know what an opioid analgesic is? They're very addictive, thank you. And many of them are derivatives of morphine, basically, okay? And a whole bunch of other stuff mixed in as well. Okay, extremely, extremely addictive, many of them, and very, very damaging to your body and your liver. Is it actually putting out the fire, or is it just disconnecting the fire alarm? Disconnecting the fire alarm. So we should be thinking, why would we want to risk becoming addicted to something that is not even going to fix the problem and is only going to lead us to more problems? Because when you first start taking medication, how many of you would agree that to begin with it works, but then you need a little bit stronger? You need something stronger, right? Okay, so you either start taking more or you need to move up the rank and go to a stronger drug. And you keep going like that, and this is what ends up happening. It's gone from about 40,000 kgs back over in about sort of 2000 up to 160,000 kgs of the stuff is now being consumed worldwide. The BBC, they wrote this in 2018. This was an article, Why Dangerous Drugs Are Still Being Used to Treat Pain. Just in England alone, GPs prescribed 23.8 million opioid-based painkillers just in 1 year. The rise of about 10 million prescriptions since 2007. What's scary, though, is more than 2 million working-age people were thought to have taken a prescription painkiller that was not prescribed for them in 2016 and 17. So there are a lot of people who are trying to access pain-killing drugs, but they can't get it through their GP, so they're having to try and source it elsewhere. You can now buy them on the internet, okay? But also, what's particularly scary is this. More than 2,000 deaths in England related to opioid overdose in 2016. These were people basically who couldn't get the painkillers they wanted, so they had to resort to taking heroin. And we're actually now seeing an increase in heroin, not because people are using it for recreation, but it's because people are in so much pain. These are not people who are just trying to have a bit of a jolly. They're there because they're in so much pain, they need something to take the edge off it. This is just in the US alone, 40 people a day die from narcotic prescription overdoses. 40 people a day, just from painkillers. These are overdose deaths. Look at the change that we're seeing in the last 10 years. It's just going up and up and up. This one here, this is cocaine. So cocaine actually hit a peak at about 2006, and then it's actually dropped. Because most people actually have started using heroin because they need pain relief, or they're just using opioid analgesics that have been prescribed to them. These are some headlines from some quite famous magazines. I think they're pretty powerful. They tell the story itself. They're very addictive. All right, and we've got to move away from this model. What are the other options? If drugs are so risky, what about surgery? Who here has had surgery already for their low back? Wow. I'm sorry. The problem with surgery, 50% of them fail, and of those 50% get worse. Would you agree that drugs and surgery are risky? Would you agree that we should leave it as a last resort? Absolutely. I'm not saying there's never a time and a place for it, but it should be an absolute last resort because it's extremely risky. If you actually look at the third leading cause of death in the UK at the moment, number one, take a guess what it is. Number one leading cause of death in the UK. Nope. Well, okay, but typically it's heart disease though, classically. Okay, over the years, yes, yeah. Okay. Second leading cause of death, typically over the last, let's say, 20 years, cancer. Okay? And third leading cause of death, believe it or not, side effects of drugs and surgery. And if you're in the US, it's number one. It's because they over-medicate and they do too many surgeries because it's privatized. You know, the NHS are trying to cut costs, so they're trying to reduce people getting too much medication and or surgery. But the bottom line, I think, is we just need to understand is it's very, very risky. You know, rods and screws in a spine, you know, once that's in, you cannot unscramble eggs. Unfortunately, it leaves scar tissue damage, which can often be there for many, many, many years. And that's assuming that, you know, they're actually getting the screws exactly where they need to be, because they can't account for the scar tissue problems. Every person's body will respond differently to surgery, and that's why they can't predict the outcome. We need to start asking better questions then. You know, if we've got this massive problem of low back pain, well, we need to try and address the root cause of why is it developing. What are the risks of these conventional procedures? The costs involved. Yes, here in the UK, if you go under the NHS, there's no cost. But how long do you think you're going to have to wait for a spine surgery? Especially at the moment. It's not really a top priority, okay? And if you go private, you're talking 20, 30,000 plus, 40,000 plus, depending upon how much you're needing, pounds. And what are the expected outcomes? There's no real guaranteed outcomes. And more importantly, what does the research say? And unfortunately, the research says 50% fail. In fact, the spine surgeon here, even on the Isle of Man, now no longer is doing spine surgery because he knows that they're risky and he doesn't do enough of them here, so he's actually now doesn't do any spine surgeries anymore. So you'd have to actually go across if you wanted a spine surgery anyway. So what are the other options though? Well, this was an interesting study that they did in America. And basically, they were just asking people how they rated in terms of efficacy of reducing their pain versus 3 different treatments: prescription medications, chiropractic treatment versus physical therapy. And what's interesting is there was only a 4% difference between chiropractic and prescription pain meds. And you've got to remember that this is just treating the symptom. We're going to start to look at this and how this might be addressing the root cause more effectively. There is also a very small percentage of people on that compared to on that. Right? So the difference is actually very, very small. Unfortunately, this is just suppressing symptoms. This is starting to get to the root cause. But there's quite a big difference between these two. And most people typically, when they have a back problem, will normally go to a physiotherapist. Okay? And yes, physio, there's some great physios on the island. We have one here. All right? But they have limited ability to try and address the root cause of some of these low back issues. We're going to cover what some of those issues are. So, when we're talking about a symptom like pain, really that's the part of the iceberg that's above the surface. That's what you can see, that's what you can feel. This is actually determining that. And there's no point chipping away at that if this is just being ignored. We have to start addressing the root cause. And the question is when we're experiencing these symptoms, we call them body signals because our body is trying to tell us something. It's trying to give us a signal that something's wrong. And we need to be thinking, well, are we listening or are we just ignoring it? Or even worse, are we just trying to suppress it with drugs and medication? All of us are on this illness-wellness continuum. So what this basically means is that you're either moving in this direction or you're moving in this direction. You're not static. You're either moving here towards high-level wellness or towards pain and suffering and early death. You're not static. And we want to try and get people as far this direction as possible. Because if you really want to be truly well, do the things that you love doing, not just next week, but in 10 years' time. Would you agree that you have to address the root of the problem? Because it's just going to keep coming back. So often when a person is starting to head in the wrong direction, they may start to get a sign. Now what's a sign? What's the difference between a sign and a symptom? A sign might be you're not experiencing any pain, but you can't really bend more than here because it's just too stiff. You can't bend right over. You can't bend right over this way because it's just too stiff, or this way. Or you just notice that your range of motion in general is not nice and flexible. So it's not a symptom, it's something that you have to assess objectively to see, actually, you know what, you're not moving well at all. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in this zone here and they don't actually realize they're heading this direction. Because they have no pain, they think they're fine. Often people only think they have a problem once the pain arrives. But once the pain arrives, already a lot of the damage has already occurred. Symptoms, yes, now you start to experience symptoms, okay? But you're now well on your way to heading the wrong direction. So we want to try and create awareness and educate people as to really what health is, what a healthy spine looks like, what it should move like, and so that you can now determine what can I do now to actually start to improve range of motion and functionality of my spine, so that not only is my back pain going to go and get better, but actually I can now start to get truly healthy and well, so that all those nerves that are coming out of my lower back are not going to affect other organs and cause me other problems down the road. So when you look at a nerve, this is a cross-section of a nerve, you'll be surprised to see that pain only forms a very small part of the nerve, part of the sensory part. Most of your nerve is actually concerned with function. But in the West, we kind of think that when you think of the word nerve, the first thing that comes to mind is normally what? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say nerve? Pain, right? Because we're so conditioned to think nerve pain, but actually what we should be thinking is nerve function. So when our nerves are being impinged on, compressed, irritated because our spine is in poor shape, it's actually going to start to affect function, how well your muscles engage, how well your organs work, etc. Okay, so let's just break this down a little bit for you. Your spine is the suit of armor that protects your nervous system, okay? And your nervous system is this spinal cord that sits inside the spine, and it branches out all these nerves that go to supply every cell, tissue, and organ in your body, as well as muscle, obviously. Your body then sends messages back via these nerves, back up the spinal cord, back up to the brain to tell the brain what's going on. So there's this constant communication between brain, body, and brain. And if that's flowing really well, we get to be healthy, our body functions well, and it heals and repairs well. However, if we start to develop blockages or interferences anywhere along those nerve lines, now function can start to be affected. How many of you would agree, if I cut this nerve here to the heart, how well do you think my heart's going to work? Not very well, right? Okay, is that fact or theory? Fact, absolutely. If I just put enough pressure on this part of the spine here where these nerves come out, can you see how it might start to irritate the function of that heart? Absolutely. So you might start to develop palpitations or circulatory problems or even heart problems. Now, if it's in this area here in your low back, it could be affecting things like bowel, bladder, reproductive, legs, etc. What we've also got to understand is that your nervous system basically is electricity, which is why I put a picture of a switchboard here. So you've got to think of when you start to get abnormal pressure on the nerve being exerted because the spine is poorly aligned and it's not moving properly, it's just like a trip switch. We've all experienced that, right? When you get a trip switch, okay? You've got to think of your nervous system the same. So when your spine's in poor shape, chances are there's some trip switches there, so your organs aren't going to be probably working properly. And muscles might not be engaging properly, which is why you're wondering why every time you bend over, you keep putting your back out, because the muscle's not engaging at the right time. It's not just because the muscle's weak. Yes, that might be the reason as well. But if the muscle cannot engage quickly, because the nerve firing to the muscle is not activating the muscle quickly, the muscle cannot engage to stabilize your spine and stop you from injuring it. So you can stretch it and you can rehab it till you're blue in the face, but until you get that nerve firing to the muscle properly, the muscle cannot engage. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Right. So next thing you need to understand is that your spine, when it cannot move properly, unfortunately, it causes this part of your brain here, called the prefrontal cortex, to start to shut down. Think of your spine like a generator and this part of the brain like a battery. The better your spine moves, the better the battery, the prefrontal cortex, works. The worse the spine moves, because it's not aligned properly and it's not able to move properly, the battery starts to go flat. Now, what you should be thinking in your head is, well, what does this part of the brain control then? What's going to happen when this starts to go flat? Well, there's 5 key things that this part of the brain controls and influences. Number 1, it controls the autonomic nervous system, which is all your organs. Organs again, okay? So, problem. Number 2, it also controls inflammation. So when this part of the brain is not able to work properly, because the spine's not moving properly, the brain now cannot regulate inflammation properly in your body. And when your body now becomes too inflamed, what do you think that results in? Pain. Chronic inflammation throughout your body will cause pain, as well as a whole bunch of other health problems as well. In fact, virtually every chronic illness that we now understand has one of its biggest root causes, chronic inflammation. So it's very important that our spine moves well so that this part of the brain can regulate inflammation, reducing your pain and allowing normal function of organs. It also controls the immune system. How many of you would agree that right now you want a strong immune system? Great, I'm glad we were in agreement with that one. Okay, so here's the scary thing. When your spine doesn't move well, it actually means this part of the brain which controls your immune system isn't able to work as well. All right, so you're going to be at greater risk of immune system issues as well. And then it also controls hormones. Okay, so ladies, wondering why menopause is so uncomfortable and unpleasant. Menopausal problems are often made much, much worse if your spine has been allowed to deteriorate so it isn't able to move properly anymore, so that this part of the brain starts to go flat, so your brain now cannot regulate hormones properly. Number 5, it also controls higher cognitive function, focus, concentration, memory, and learning. This part of the brain. So would you agree that you probably might start to suffer memory problems when your spine doesn't move well? Remember, the better your spine moves, the better this part of the brain works. This part of the brain controls memory and concentration, okay? And this is often why people will notice as they're getting older that their memory is deteriorating. It's not, ladies and gentlemen, because you're old. It's because your spines are seizing up, okay? It just so happens that the older you get, are you more likely to have a stiff, rigid spine? Yes or no? Yes. If you get your spine moving well, though, the cool thing is this starts to work better. So you can actually age very well and not have to worry about those kind of problems nearly as much as those who are not looking after their spine. And you can actually age very gracefully. Some people will it'll deteriorate to such an extent that they're going to have a much greater risk of developing things like dementia, Alzheimer's. All right, so suddenly now a well-moving spine is more important than just keeping you out of pain, but it's critical to your actual health as well and your mental cognitive capabilities. Now, what I've just described to you here has really only become known to the medical fraternity really in the last 5 or 10 years. So most GPs still don't know this. And certainly most people won't. Is this empowering, though? By knowing this, do you think that's going to make a difference for you? Yes. If you then actually do something about getting your spine moving, right? Okay. How many 90-year-olds have you seen who can barely move their spine are healthy and still playing golf? It doesn't happen, right? But those few 90-year-olds who are still playing golf, generally what is their health like? It's pretty good. Because the two are hand in hand. Healthy spine equals healthy body. Unhealthy spine means the beginning of the end. Okay, this goes flat and everything else deteriorates. All right. Now, unfortunately, what also happens when your spine doesn't move properly, it creates a lot of stress hormones fired up to your brain. The better your spine moves, it physically dampens or inhibits the stress response within your brain. The worse the spine moves, there's nothing now to dampen the stress response. And so your brain becomes more and more stressed. It starts to produce all these stress hormones, which now cause things like blood pressure problems. When you're stressed, can you understand how your blood pressure is going to go up, right? Now, if you're stressed, not because of anything in work, let's say you've got you're retired and you've got a nice healthy bank balance and there's nothing stressful in work or at home, but your spine's not moving, it's creating constant stress up to your brain. And that might be why you're having to take blood pressure meds. I know some of you are sitting here probably taking blood pressure meds and you're wondering why. I don't feel stressed. Why is my blood pressure up? I must have been born like that. No, you weren't. It's not a genetic problem. But there's constant stress being fired up to your brain. And often it's simply because of problems in the spine that are doing it. Heart rate can go up. Muscle tone. Muscles start to tense. Would you agree that when you're stressed, your muscles tense up? Yes. Digestion upset. All right? That's often why people struggle with things like IBS, because when they're stressed, the body isn't interested in your digestive system. Picture this. Okay, you're walking in the bush. You're having a walking safari and you suddenly come across a pride of lions. What do you think happens? You're going to get stressed, right? Okay, very fast. you're walking, okay, no gun, okay, in a walking safari, you're going to get stressed. What your body does is it now immediately prepares you to either fight the lion or run away from the lion. Everything else is a waste of time. It's not interested in it. So would you agree that digesting your hamburger at lunch is not a top priority when you're about to be mauled by a lion? Yes? Yes. Okay. Correct. Okay. How many of you are thinking about sex when you're about to be mauled by a lion? Hopefully none of you. If you are, you should be in a weird, strange place, one of those kinky places, because your body doesn't care about reproduction either. Okay. Or how about immune system? I don't even know if the immune system's on here. Yeah, there we go. Immune response goes down. Because when you come across a crowd of lions, would you agree white blood cells are not going to save you from that lion trying to rip your head off? No. Okay? Unfortunately, the immune response, though, is very energy consuming. So your body now will have to down-regulate your immune system and your digestion and your reproduction, because all those things chew up a lot of energy. Because it's trying to free up energy instead so you can run really fast or fight really hard, or at least run faster than your mate. Wow, you guys are a bit slow off the mark there, eh? Okay? So it's that fight or flight response. Why do you think there's so many, would you agree our world today is stressful? Yes. Okay, why do you think there's so many young couples now struggling to fall pregnant? Because their bodies are in fight-flight mode all the time. They're not interested in reproducing. Or how about digestive system problems? Virtually every Tom, Dick, and Sally now is struggling with IBS. Or how about immune system problems? Well, the classic, isn't it? What COVID-19 has taught us is that people who used to think that they were actually healthy, we might look good and feel good, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're healthy. Because when we actually come across a threat, it really highlights any inherent weaknesses that are there. And I think if COVID-19 has taught us one thing, it's made us realize that maybe we weren't as healthy as we thought we were for many people. Because when your body becomes stressed, it doesn't care about white blood cells. It down-regulates your immune system. And that's why so many people are struggling with colds and flu and whatever it is at the moment, whether it be COVID, etc. And for some people, their immune systems have now become so dysfunctional that the body thinks everything's a threat. So it even begins to attack itself. What do we call that? An autoimmune disease. Why do you think autoimmune diseases are getting out of control? Right? It's all because of a stress response. And your spine not moving, your lower back that's stiff and not moving and is causing you pain, is unfortunately contributing to huge stresses to your brain. That's driving all of this. So it's causing so much more than just your pain, potentially. Yeah, I think you can kind of get an idea of all of the rest, right? Okay. Why do you think so many people are on cholesterol-lowering drugs? Because your body, when it comes across a pride of lions, it's going to make more LDL cholesterol, the supposed bad cholesterol. There's no such thing as good cholesterol or bad cholesterol. It's just what's appropriate or not. That LDL cholesterol is going to save your life, because that LDL cholesterol causes wound clotting. Would you agree that you want your body to be able to clot wounds quite quickly when you're about to be mauled by a lion? Yes or yes? Yes! Because if it rips your arm off, you're going to just bleed to death. So that LDL cholesterol is going to save your life. But here's the key thing. The problem is the world we live in today, yes, we're not coming across lions, but we're coming across our stresses, and we've got these constant stresses firing off in your body because of the state of your spine, the stressful world that we're in, whether it be traffic, work commitments, juggling kids and work all at the same time, whatever it is. We're in such a stressful world that our bodies are constantly in this fight-flight state, and we're very rarely dropping into the healing repair mode. And so your cholesterol profile is going to change, because it's intelligent for your body to spike your LDL cholesterol when you come across a lion, but it's not actually healthy if it's like that for 20 years. Does that make sense? Because now that's going to suddenly increase your chance of heart disease, stroke, and all the rest of it. Okay, number one leading cause of death in most of the Western world. All right. So let's start to look at health maybe through a better lens. Because would you agree, judging our health on how we look or feel is probably not a good idea? How many people do you know if you suddenly drop dead of a heart attack? They felt perfectly fine the day before, but literally the next day they dropped dead of a heart attack. Yet they looked fine and they felt fine. Or how about cancer? Maybe you've heard of someone who's just gone in for a routine scan. They felt fine, they looked fine, but they were diagnosed with cancer. And within 2 years they're dead. Happens more often than we realize, doesn't it? So again, judging our health and how we look or feel, good idea or bad idea? Bad. But unfortunately we do that because our whole system, our whole health system tends to be very reactive instead of proactive. The reality is though, is healthy is normal if you give the body what it needs and you remove what it doesn't need. The problem we have today is that there's so many sick people that we actually now think it's normal to get sick. My daughter is now 10 years old. She's never been to the GP ever. Not once. She's never taken an anti-inflammatory, a Calpol, any form of medication. She's had zero medical intervention ever. She has the best class attendance at school. Was that luck? No, because my second daughter, who is a little bit younger than her, much the same. Because we've created a healthy environment for them. We've kept their nervous systems healthy. We've kept them free of interferences in the nervous system. We've given them a healthy diet, regular exercise, constant uplifting talk, affirmations, whatever it is, prayer time to change the way they think, to try and manage stress in their lives. Your body is smart. So is it intelligent that your body produces pain when there's a problem? Yes, absolutely, okay? Unfortunately, we are sometimes not smart when we just try and suppress the pain, okay? But it's trying to tell us something. And your nervous system is the master system. It controls everything. It controls your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your digestive system. It controls everything. That's why we call it the master system. And your spine is the suit of armor that protects that nervous system. So if your spine is all out of alignment and your posture is all out of whack, how well is your nervous system going to work? Not so great, right? Okay? And we've established this already. And this source of stress comes in the form of thoughts, toxins, and trauma. Modern life is extremely stressful emotionally. We know that. It's a rat race. Toxins, how many of you would agree that our diet today is worse than it was on average 30 years ago? Yeah. Okay. Kids today, are they eating as well as they did 30 years ago? Definitely not 50 years ago. All right? When everything was home cooked 50 years ago and McDonald's didn't even exist. Well, maybe I'm telling my age there. They probably did exist. But anyway, maybe only just. Okay. So we're exposed to huge amounts of toxins. The average apple sprayed 15 times with pesticide. 15 times! All that toxin is getting into your body. And unfortunately, these toxins are very neurotoxic, many of them. So it actually stops your nerves from firing properly. Traumas. Yes, yeah, we're going to have car accidents, we're going to have sporting injuries, knocks and falls, falling off ladders, trees, walls, roofs, etc. But unfortunately, it's the micro-trauma that actually is probably one of our biggest problems. Okay? It's repetitive, bad habits because of technology. This is kind of the world we're in. We're now seeing kids with postures of 60-year-olds and they're only 16 because they're like this. Agree? Some of you older folk, okay? Like I'm shocked, and I'm in like 44, and I'm just it's harrowing what we're seeing now. And the problem is this day in, day out, and over time it starts to affect the state of your spine and nervous system. And you can say, well, I'm trying to be active, I'm trying to, take regular breaks, and that's great. But the reality is, compare your lifestyle to a hunter-gatherer who lives in the jungle, who walks 10 miles a day and does all sorts of physical active things, we're just not even close to really living the kind of life that our genes actually are designed to be exposed to. Because remember, we're hunter-gatherers. Would you agree we're all hunter-gatherers, right?
Yes.
All right? But how many of us are living hunter-gatherer lifestyles? None of us. Okay? Hunter-gatherers don't sit on a chair for 4 or 5 hours. Okay? All right? Sitting is the new smoking. This is, unfortunately, going to take more years off your life than if you smoked. That is fact now. Scary, isn't it? Person who smokes on average 15 cigarettes a day, you can expect them to have 10 years taken off their life. Person who sits 8 hours a day, typical office job, 12 hours off their life. 12 years off their life. So it's a huge problem that we have. And it's because it's that motionless, bad posture position that causes huge stress to the spine, huge stress to your nervous system, causes this part of your brain to shut down. Remember, what does this part of your brain control? 5 key things, okay? All of which will have life-changing impacts on you. All right, so when we get these misalignments in the spine that start to put stress on the nervous system, it's given a name. It's called the subluxation. All right? And essentially, you're going to get, with the misalignment, soft tissue damage, inflammation, nerve irritation, muscle spasm and pain, which is what most people are noticing. Lost imbibition, which basically means there's no flux of water into the disc. The disc only now stays healthy if it's moving, because it has a pumping action. All right, remember the shock absorber? All right, but if it no longer moves, there's no pumping action, so it can't inflate. So the disc degenerates and withers. And then you get joint fixation. Clearly, joints aren't moving, stiff and rigid. We're suffering, really, I think, what can be termed a movement deficiency syndrome. It's a toxic global physiology problem, causing all of this again. And remember, just because you have no pain doesn't mean to say there's no problem there. Most people will only feel pain once 90% of the damage has occurred, because only 10% of your nervous system is even interested in pain. So theoretically, you could be 90% damaged and you're not going to feel anything. All right. So how do you know if you have subluxations? Well, if you get someone who's trained to detect and correct them, they can actually feel them, they can palpate them. And that's obviously what chiropractors are trained to do. That's what we spend 6 years doing. I don't know how many bodies I've felt, but I've felt a lot of bodies. It's quite weird, because when I initially went into training, I wasn't really a touchy-feely person. But after 3 years of chiropractic college, I was touching everything. You get over it quite quickly. Dr. Newman knew that. But you learn to feel it, all right? And you can feel exactly where the spine is not moving properly. Posture is the window to the spine. Postural abnormalities are normally the earliest indications of postural problems. So as the posture is off, so the spine and nervous system is off. So we're going to do a very quick demonstration now. Do I have an audience? Yes, yeah, great. You are going to be filmed, so whoever volunteers, all we're going to do is we're just going to assess your posture. Do I have a volunteer? You're amazing. What's your name? Kristen. Please give Kristen a round of applause. If we make this a bit more interactional, you're not going to fall asleep, because I'm going to start to see a couple of glazed eyes there, and I don't want you all nodding off. But this is going to be really helpful, because you're going to start to now be able to assess people's posture. Kristen, come through. You're amazing. Thank you. All right. Okay. So remember, this is just a teaching thing here, so we're not trying to pick you to pieces. Okay. All right. So when you look at a person, in fact, let me just point out a few things first before we carry on. I want you to close your eyes, face straight ahead. Take a few steps on the spot. Forward. No, just walk on the spot, yeah. Okay, and stop. And I want you to nod your head down to the ground, then up to the ceiling, and then back to what you think is normal. Now, don't move your head, don't move your body, but open your eyes. Okay, don't move. Statue. Okay, right. Now, audience, which shoulder is higher? We all got it right, okay? So you don't have to be doctors to see this, all right? Do you think they should be the same height?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so you're definitely leaning down to the right there, okay? Okay, right, now, clearly that's going to be causing you problems in here. Yes, okay? Because if you like that, abnormal loading now is going through your bones and your joints and your muscles, all right? What do you think it's doing to the nerves? Now, she might not have pain yet, or she does now, but maybe when it first started, she might not have felt it. Often only comes late. Okay, next thing is, keep facing straight ahead. Close your eyes, head down to the ground, up to the ceiling, back to where everything is normal. Close your eyes, don't move your head. All right, okay. I can see this, but I don't know if you guys are going to be able to. Which way is her head shifted, right or left?
That way.
Correct, well done. Okay, so what we're seeing here, I'm going to show you. Okay, dropped. Okay, so the head is actually shifted like that to the right as well. All right. Now, let's see if there's anything else that we can see. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see though, but which arm do you think is hanging in front, left or right? Which is going to dictate whether her ribcage is twisting.
I'd say that one.
If you're to, yeah, it's in front, right? Because actually what's happening, okay, she's doing this. Can you see that? Okay, so here's what she's doing. She's rotating, dropping, shifting. You're probably going to be much heavier on your right side, okay, if you just stand on the scales. All right? Now, obviously, you should be evenly balanced. Okay, but that's all going to cause abnormal loading and things going through to her low back as well. All right. Okay, now let's get you facing that way now. Okay, now when you look at a person from the side, a straight line should pass through the ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. We're going to have to get rid of the twist first. Okay, right, so is the ear directly above the shoulder? Or is it in front of? It's in front of, yeah. And if her shoulders actually weren't rounded in, can you see it's definitely in front of? Yeah, because her head is coming forwards. So she's got the classic Western posture, head shunted forwards, too much time on a computer or looking down at a book or something, or a phone. All right? And then also often you'll find that the pelvis is sliding forwards as well. Okay? So the classic posture for many Westerners is this ends up happening. Okay? Pelvis slides forward, abnormal loading on the lower back here can contribute towards a lot of problems. Okay? Or you might see this kind of thing. The bum almost seems like it's sticking out because the whole rib cage is shifting forwards. Again, that can cause problems down here, which might actually be what's going on with her as well. But the only way we're going to really check and tell this is with an X-ray. Okay, but it's giving us an insight as to what might be going on here. All right. So when you look at a person from the front, okay, obviously a straight line should pass right through the middle of their body. Okay. Look for the head tilting. So one ear might be higher or lower. Look for the ears. Can you see more of one ear than the other? Just sit down. Please give Kristen a big hand. You're fantastic, thank you. So when you look at a person straight on, you might see something like this. Can you see that? You can see more of this ear than this one. Because my head's turned, okay, like we could see with your rib cage. You might see it shifting like this, or you might see a gap on one side between the arm and the side of the body compared to the other side. Can you see that? All right, okay, because the whole rib cage is shifted across. So these are the kind of things that you can start to look out for when you're looking at your family members or just friends. It's an immediate indication that postures, yeah, I appreciate that, yeah, man. Well, my wife laughs at me because when I'm standing there in an airport, I'm just watching people. You can imagine what I'm doing. So by teaching them these kind of things, though, you can help them be made aware of early problems before they become big issues. Okay, posture is the window to the spine. Postural abnormalities are normally the earliest indications of subluxations. As the posture is off, so the spine and nervous system is off as well. Okay, so posture. Stress response evaluation, basically we use an electroencephalograph, an EEG, where we can measure your brainwave activity and we can see how well your brain body is communicating, and also it measures heart rate variability, so we can actually see how well your brain is controlling your autonomic nervous system. That can also tell us if there are any subluxations in the nervous system. So that's pretty cool technology that we can do as well. But also then the most obvious is X-ray, all right? You can see straight away where the spine is off. So we'll actually show a picture of your spine, where it is versus where it should be. And we can actually see which parts of your spine are out of alignment and how that might be affecting your problems, whether it be something as simple as low back pain, or it could be other issues that you might be struggling with as well, whether it be heartburn, acid reflux, indigestion, whatever it is. Okay. So really, you want to try and see if you can, at some point, get checked. Okay, get checked for subluxations, because that could end up saving you a lot of problems down the road. So there are going to be a few things that we need to start doing. We need to stop doing things, slow down some things and start doing others. And, you know, I could spend, honestly, 5 hours talking to you guys about exactly everything that you can start doing. Yes, stop sitting for long periods without taking regular breaks. Movement is life. Don't sit for long periods, all right? You want to slow down in terms of start thinking about reducing medication in favor of doing things that are actually going to fix your problem. But don't just suddenly come off your drugs, please. If you're taking painkillers, don't just suddenly come off them. You need to work with a healthcare provider who can transition you slowly off them, because we have to add health first before we can start taking you off medication. All right, so please always work with your GP, okay, on things like that. Some of the things you can start doing, well, there's lots, okay? So one of the things you can start doing is simply start reducing your inflammatory diet, okay? So if you're eating lots of cereals and grains, that's going to create a lot of inflammation in your body, because cereals and grains basically are packed full of omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids are very inflammatory. So you're going to experience more pain simply because your diet is too high in omega-6 fatty acids. So start to move away from the bread and the pasta and the cereals and grains. Okay, oats and brown rice are exceptions. You can have some of those, one serving of that a day, either breakfast or lunch. Okay, and move over towards fruits and vegetables as your main source of carbohydrate. Okay, that's an easy fix that you can start doing. Start taking in omega-3 fatty acid, fish oil. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory. It's going to help reduce your inflammation and helping reduce your pain. All right, start exercising. Make sure you're doing at least 30 minutes of walking every day. That's the minimum you should be trying to do. Get involved in activities and exercises that create a lot of movement of the spine. Okay, those are also, whether it be swimming, Pilates, etc. Okay, those can be really helpful too. And get checked, you know. Start actually investigating your spine, see if there are any subluxation issues there. And for those of you who are wondering if you have any subluxation issues there, you know, Dr. Newman and I are part of a network of wellness doctors called the Wellness Champions, and part of our goal is to give you a detailed insight into your health and wellness possibilities. And essentially what we're going to be offering you tonight, for the fact that you guys are action takers and you're trying to actually do something, we're giving you a special offer where basically if you think you might have some subluxation problems that could be causing your low back issues and or other health problems that you might be struggling with, we're going to give you a detailed examination and consultation where basically we're going to go through your history, we'll go through an examination, and if we feel we need to do any x-rays, we'll perform a set of x-rays with you. We'll also do a 3D posture analysis with a digital posture analysis bit of software so we can have a 3D perspective of your x-rays. And then we're going to pull all those results together and go through a detailed report of findings with you, normally a day or two later. And at that report, basically, we're going to go through where your spine is versus where it should be, and you'll be able to see straight away which parts of your spine are not aligned the way they should be, because we'll draw on your spine where it is versus where it should be. And then you'll be able to see how that might be affecting your problems. And then we'll put together a care plan to try and help now get rid of those subluxation problems if we have indeed found any significant subluxations there. We never force people obviously into care of any sorts. I would strongly encourage you, though, at least just get yourselves checked at some point, though, because even if you just get checked and you don't do anything straight away, at least you now know what might be causing your problem. And when you're in a place where you feel, now I can actually address it, then you can do that. But what I am going to tell you is this. There's a great doctor once said to me, Neil, the biggest challenge in healthcare today is actually procrastination. Procrastination is the thief of health. After all you've learned today, if you want to start to get healthy and you want to finally address your back problem once and for all and get it addressed, don't procrastinate, all right? So what we're doing is to help you to stop procrastinating is we're going to give you a special offer. So normally the whole assessment costs £160. If you chat to Audrey afterwards today, we'll slash 50% off. So you'll only pay £80 to get the full assessment done. So that's the whole assessment plus the report of findings. Okay, so it's about 2 hours. Okay, that assessment will take about an hour, and the report of findings will probably take about 45 minutes. Okay, and then you'll know very clearly really what's going on and if there's anything we can do to help you. And we'll be straight and honest with you. If we feel there's nothing we can do, Dr. Newman and I will tell you. We're not going to just string you along, all right? It changed my life. Chiropractic absolutely saved my life. I can tell you that hands down. And I know Dr. Newman, it changed his life. That's why he decided to become one too. So if you're interested, just chat to Audrey after at the front desk, and she'll take payment and she'll book you in. If she doesn't actually book your appointment in today, she'll just take your name and number so she can phone you tomorrow, and then she'll make the booking tomorrow. All right, but if you want to secure that slot, just chat to her. What also I'm going to suggest is if you've got any family members or friends that you know this would definitely benefit from them, we've also decided as a COVID special offer, post-lockdown, we're going to extend it to them as well. But obviously you would have to pay for them tonight. They'll have to just pay you back. All right. If you've got any burning questions, I will be available here afterwards for a few minutes. Otherwise, thank you. You guys have been a great audience, and hopefully we'll get to see you sooner rather than later. All right. Take care.